We go with that? Okay. So, real quick intro on this, guys. When you are moving through this initial module, it is the science module. Remember, module 1, exercise science, module 2, nutrition, business, lifestyle behavior, and then customer service. When we start with the science material, main focus here is for you to memorize material so that you can ultimately use it when you are actually training people, okay? So the first thing I want to do is start at the initial slide that we start with every one of our lessons. This is the agenda with the appropriate pages. So module 1, lesson 1, which is human anatomy, starts off with skeletal muscle anatomy. Then we talk about the nervous system, muscle fiber typing, the skeletal system, and then the cardiorespiratory system. Okay, now it's not a bad idea to look at the learning outcomes as well. So understanding and explaining the general structure. And by the way, this is really important when it comes to the testing, right? So when it comes to doing your quizzes, your practice exams, and then your final exam, the learning outcomes can be very helpful. So if you can answer, I mean, that's really what you're doing. It's just, you're trying to answer these questions. If there's a question on there or trying to explain it. One of the best ways to kind of determine if you've learned material is, can you explain it to somebody else, or can you kind of even talk to yourself about it? So I'll give you an example. Understand and explain the general structure of a muscle cell, including the myofibril sarcomere and myofilaments. Now that is that's a really good example of trying to understand materials and then try to kind of explain it. So I should be able to explain that you have a muscle belly, muscle cell, and then all the structures that are components of it. And it's going to be the same thing with these other learning outcomes. It's a good idea to go through those. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first slide. And by the way, you could, if you want, just give me a thumbs up or use a little hand raising if you've got a question, and then I'll pull us off of the full screen. So skeletal muscle anatomy. Now, the best way to sort of go about this is to, and I'm going to recommend this too as we're doing this, is grab a pencil, pen, a marker, and actually draw this out. It's actually really helpful to draw this from the general all the way down to the very specific or the smallest part of the general structure of muscle, skeletal muscle anatomy. We always talk about this as skeletal muscle, folks. Remember, this is in with respect to smooth muscle tissue like your intestines, and cardiac muscle tissue, obviously your heart. So we're very specific about this. We're talking about skeletal muscle and the anatomy of the skeletal muscle. We generally start with this understanding that there is a muscle belly. Everybody look, right? You got a bicep. Yeah. You've got a deltoid. You got your pecs. That is a muscle. So that's a muscle belly. And that's what we're kind of looking at first. So we start from the larger general and we start to work down to the smallest structure, which is going to be the sarcomere. So what is the muscle belly? It's composed of fascicles. Okay. So we start with the muscle belly. Muscle belly is composed of fascicles. Okay. And fascicles are simply the distinct units within a muscle belly, and they are just, the units that actually hold the muscle cells. So everybody got this. You're training your bicep. That is a muscle belly. Your biceps muscle is actually composed of these units or subunits known as fascicles. So everybody got that? Simple, yes? But fascicles themselves are really where the muscle cells are. So a lot of folks, the way they kind of look at this is they look at a muscle belly, and in general, the thought is that, well, I've got a muscle belly and it's just a bunch of muscle cells, right? And some folks, that's what they think. Well, yes and no. The muscle cells are actually contained in these distinct structures known as fascicles. Now, why is this important? Because the muscle belly and the fascicles and the muscle cells are all surrounded by what? Connective tissue. And that's what gives them their distinct structural differences. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So the idea then is that you have a muscle cell, a muscle belly broken down into these fascicles. And by the way, y'all can see the picture here, right? Yeah, you got that? This is why it's not a bad idea. You kind of draw a circle, and then you can draw these little incremental subunits. One is the fascicle, okay? So the fascicle itself is surrounded by, and you've seen some of these terms, right? So you have the epimysium, that's how it's pronounced, epimysium, the muscle belly. Then there's the perimysium, and then you have what are known as muscle cells. Muscle cells are surrounded by what's known as the endomysium. So muscle belly, fascicles, muscle cells. Now, that's simple enough. Yes? So the muscle cell, you would think, well, isn't that the main unit of the muscle belly? In a sense, yes, but we need to take a couple of steps down even deeper into the structure. And by the way I like to think about it, who's got hair? Because I don't have any. Who's got a string? Okay, thank you. Wait a second. Francette? Okay, can you do me a favor? Can you just grab can you grab a hair out of just give a tug and show everybody? Just grab one hair. But there you go. Just one. A single hair. Okay, pull it out and show it to everybody. Yeah, come on. There you go. Can everybody see that? No. Nikisha's like, no. Yeah, of course you can't, because what's the diameter of a human hair? There it is, folks. Well, think about this. The diameter of a muscle cell is about 1/10 the diameter of that hair that she just showed you. Y'all with me? Literally, a muscle cell is as long as the muscle belly. That's why this is really important to understand. We normally will think that your muscle belly is just an aggregate of muscle cells held together. No. Your muscle cells are in an aggregate called a fascicle, and those fascicles are surrounded by a connective tissue known as the perimysium. And then all of these fascicles are contained within that muscle belly. So the muscle cell, as thin as it is, its diameter is really, really small, is as long as the muscle belly. How long is your bicep? From tendon to tendon. It's about this long, isn't it? Yeah? Wouldn't you agree? Every muscle cell in your bicep is a diameter way smaller than a human hair, but as long as that muscle belly. So the ratio of length to diameter is very, very large for human muscle cells. I hope that makes sense. That's kind of it's a difficult concept in one sense to kind of understand, but think about that. A single muscle cell. Remember, when Francette held that hair, it was like this, right? It was like this, but you couldn't see it. The diameter is so tiny. It's the same thing with muscle cells. Now, given that we understand the muscle belly, the fascicle, and the muscle cell, now we have to take a deeper dive. Muscle cells themselves are composed of smaller structures, okay? And the main structure that comprise muscle cells are what are known as myofibrils. Y'all with me? You've got to know these distinctions. Belly, fascicle, cell, myofibril. What is a myofibril? These are again, distinct units that contain the fundamental contractile units of skeletal muscle, or what we call the sarcomere. You all have seen this. If you've gone through these materials already, you're going to be hit with this concept of the sarcomere. And of course, in the next couple of slides, we're going to show you those specific subunits. The sarcomere is the structural, it is the sort of main unit, contractile unit of a muscle. Y'all with me on this? Yes? So far? Everybody with me? The sarcomeres themselves are made up of what are known as myofilaments. Yes? Is everyone familiar with myosin and actin? Right? Those are what we call the myofilaments. You got it. You got to know these terms, folks. That's what's really important. And by the way, when you move into your NASM or your ACE materials, you're going to see the same thing. You're going to notice that they talk a lot about the sarcomere and these structural subunits known as the myofilaments. These are proteins. Myosin is a protein. Actin is a protein. Y'all got that? Why do we need protein in our diets? Well, we need it for a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons we need a good amount of protein in our diet is to replace and maintain these structures known as myofilaments. You got it? And by the way, the whole contractile machinery is functionally dependent on the sarcomere and these myofilaments. Everybody got this? Yes? Okay. So, and you can read through this. Myosin and actin are the two main myofilaments. Okay. Next slide. The actin and the myosin are going to define. Now watch this. They are going to define on either side of these two protein contractile filaments. They are going to define what we call the sarcomere. That makes sense? Okay. Actin filaments are also termed thin filaments in reference to their relatively thin compared to the myosin. Okay. They have what are known as binding sites. Now, folks, please don't go into Google and start Googling all this, because you will go into an academic black hole you will never get out of. Okay. This stuff is incredibly interesting, but you can spend your entire academic career just studying the proteins that make up muscle fibers. So please don't do that. Stay a little superficial here with me. These binding sites are what allow the heads of the myosin, right, to attach and detach. That's what's ultimately going to allow us to understand what's known as the sliding filament theory. Once again, please don't go too much deeper than you need to on this. We have the sliding filament theory. It is based on the ability of actin and myosin filaments to kind of slide over each other, hence the term sliding filament, right? They slide over each other. It's a little bit more elaborate than that, but that is the concept that we look at. But we don't want to go any deeper. Please don't go any deeper than that. Is everybody with me on kind of what you need to memorize and understand? Myosin, actin, sliding filament theory. Myosin is what we call the thick filament in reference because it's thicker, and it is what contains what we call tails and heads. It's the head of the myosin that attaches to the actin. Cross bridges is what we call them. They swivel and things move closer together. Sarcomeres shorten, and voila, you're able to curl a dumbbell. Why? Because when all of the sarcomeres in all the necessary number of muscle fibers and the myofibrils in the muscles, when all the requisite number of attachments occur and cross bridging occurs, you are able to produce tension. Tension is ultimately what allows you to overcome the resistance of curling a dumbbell. Is it more complicated than that? Do you need to know the more? No. By the way, if anybody has a question, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm hoping that in explaining it like this, it makes a little bit more sense. Okay. You have myosin filaments, okay, and there's a bunch of them, folks. And then you have these actin filaments on either side of the myosin filament. And ultimately, what's going to happen is those actin filaments on either side of the central myosin filament are going to get shorter. And when they do that, they pull the edges of the sarcomere together. Now, it's easy to then imagine that in every myofibril, in these muscle cells, your sarcomeres are in sequence from one tendon all the way to the other. So how many sarcomeres, if you want to give this a shot, how many sarcomeres would you think are located in one muscle cell in your biceps? Take a guess. Who wants to take a guess? Raise your hand if you want to take a guess, and I'll ask you to unmute. Who wants to take a guess? Got nobody? Oh, man. All right. Francette, unmute, and you tell me.
Million. Millions.
You know, the funny thing is it's not a million, but you're on the right side of the number line. Hundreds of thousands. Now, again, I'm the only one impressed. I'm the only one that's like, my mind is blown on this. Folks, in that hair that Francette showed you, that's a muscle cell. From one end to the other are probably 50,000, 40,000 individual sarcomeres that are connected in sequence. Does everybody get this? And every one of those little sarcomeres has myosin and actin protein filaments. Myosin itself as a protein contains 3,000, 4,000 amino acids in it. Are y'all with me on the scale that we're talking about? This is a remarkable system that we have to create tension and generate tension in muscles just to do the things you're doing right now. Well, you're not doing a lot right now, but if you were actually doing something like lifting weights, the body is a remarkable machine just from this perspective of the ability to generate tension because of these mechanisms. Is everybody with me on this? Yes? Okay. So that's that slide. Sliding filament theory, shortening of actin over myosin, one sarcomere connected to another sarcomere. It's in series all the way. And when all of those sarcomeres shorten, right, from one tendon to the next, if you have enough muscle cells doing that, the entire muscle can shorten. That makes sense to everybody? Yes? Okay. So any questions on those? That's a very simple explanation of the sliding filament theory. Yes? Ab, you got any questions on that? You good? Okay. The next slide here is about the nervous system. And it's basically actually the neuromuscular system. The most important concept here that I want you to get from this slide, it's all important, but the main concept is what's known as the motor unit. What is a motor unit? Anybody remember? Raise your hand if you know what a motor unit is without looking at your screen. Okay. Nikisha, come on. You know what a motor unit is, right? Yeah? Hold on. Go ahead. Unmute. See if you can unmute for me, Nikisha, and tell everybody, what is a motor unit?
A single nerve cell.
And all the muscle cells that it attaches to. Yeah, you had it. You were right there. Guys, why is the concept of a motor unit important? Why is the concept of a motor unit important? Does anybody know? Give it a shot. You're only being recorded for the rest of the world to listen to your attempt. All right, Jonathan, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead. Go ahead and unmute. Go ahead and unmute. Hang on. Here you go. Unmute. There you go. Come on, Jonathan.
Because they receive the commands to stimulate the skeletal muscle.
Booyah. And Monica, it's the system of the muscles and how it works. Yes, that's a very general way of explaining it. Jonathan, say it again. Say it again so everybody can.
They receive the commands to stimulate the skeletal muscle.
Yeah, so the motor unit, because it is the electrical output of a nerve cell, to all of the muscle cells that it connects to. So, okay, well, it's probably the answer to one of the test questions. But remember, it's one nerve, multiple muscles. One nerve, multiple muscles. Now, The concept of the motor unit is very helpful depending on the type of training you're doing. Okay, and it's also going to be related to what we'll talk about probably next week when we get to the rest of the slides. But the concept of the motor unit is this. You have a nerve, right? The body of the nerve itself, which is located, are those your dogs, John? I like that, okay. The nerve, which is located in your spinal column. Now, you receive the initial impulse to contract your biceps from your gray matter up here, right? So the initial nerve impulse from your brain down through your spinal cord, then out to the muscles that you want to work. But it is those nerve cells in your spinal column that are going to signal the muscle fibers. So everybody raise your left hand. Okay, say it with me. One nerve, right hand, multiple muscle fibers. It's a single nerve, multiple muscle fibers. Don't let the test question confuse you when it says one muscle and multiple nerves. It's a single nerve. It is the wiring. Does everybody live in a house? You got electricity? Yeah. Do you have these things on the wall where you can turn your light on and off? Switches? Yes. This means yes. Right? You got those? When you flick the switch up, you are allowing electrical potential that's sitting there in those wires to move to your light. It's the same thing with your nerves. Your nerves can generate electrical potential, and they send it down through, and you can read it in there, through the nerve, from the nerve body through the axon of the nerve to the muscle. And it applies an electrical stimulus, and the muscle can contract. Is everybody with me? One nerve, multiple muscle cells. Why is this important? Because when you're doing dumbbell curls, you need a good amount of muscle fibers to be activated to curl that 10-pound dumbbell. Versus, watch this. Can everybody see my finger? Yes? How much muscle activity is needed in my forearm to do this? How much? A lot? A little? How much muscle is needed to do this? Very little, right? I'm just moving my finger. How about when I blink my eyes, the ocular muscles? How much muscle activity is needed to blink your eye? Very little, right? So this is where the concept of motor unit size comes in. Folks, you got to get this. The size of a motor unit does not mean the physical size of a muscle cell or a nerve. The quote, size of a motor unit is based on the number of muscle fibers associated with a single nerve cell. I said that too fast. So I'm going to say it again slowly. Listen, look, I'm putting it in quotes. The size of a motor unit, the size of a motor unit is based on the number of muscle fibers attached to its single nerve. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes or no? Yes? Please say yes. If you don't, please let me know if that does not make sense. When I say that a motor unit is large, what am I saying? What am I saying? Francette, unmute.
It means like a lot of muscle fibers.
A lot of muscle fibers. What happens if I say, or what if I say that it is and you see I'm using air quotes, I'm hoping that's helping you, a smaller motor unit. What am I saying?
Fewer muscle fibers are involved.
Fewer muscle fibers. Y'all get this? I want to hit home on this. We're going to end with this today, but I just want to make sure y'all get this concept. It is critically important. In the field of personal training, in resistance training, the concept of a motor unit for the personal trainer is extremely valuable. It's very valuable. Why? Because you have muscle fibers of different types that are going to be part of larger or smaller motor units. Muscles in the body have all different size of motor units. Remember, I said size, meaning that certain muscles in your body tend to have larger motor unit sizes, meaning more muscle fibers per nerve cell. Is everybody with me? So what is the size of a motor unit? It's always going to be a single nerve, but what determines the size of a motor unit, whether it's small or large? The number of muscle cells associated with that nerve. Raise your hand if you are not confused. How many of y'all got that? Yes? How many of y'all are confused? Jonathan, you're still confused. No, you're not confused. You're good. Is everybody good? Paulina, are you good? Yes? Lisa, Janine, you got this? Yes, does this make everybody's good? You know, that's a good idea. How about everybody? If you're okay with it, say good in the chat. I want to make sure that when you leave today, you got this basic concept. So everybody write good. Monica, thank you. Steve, Francette, good. Paulina, good. Nikisha, what is the difference in muscle cells and muscle fibers? That's a great question. We're going to have to wait till next week because it's already 1:34. And I'm going to, I guess basically I'm forcing you guys to come back next week. Okay. Does a bigger motor unit mean it gets tired quickly as well? That's going to relate. Ninadan, that's going to relate to muscle fiber typing. Haha, that's right. You guys got to come back next week. Yes? You okay with that? Ninadan, that is correct, but that's based on muscle fiber type. Y'all get this? I hope y'all understand that we're doing this 15, 20 minutes because if we extend too far, it's just going to be too painful for you guys. So next week we are going to start right where we're leaving off here, folks. Is everybody good? Everybody got that first slide and the part of that second slide? Yes. Remember, we're going through the workbook here, folks. This is going to take however long it's going to take, but I'm hoping that this is beneficial for you guys to learn the material. Yes. Yes. Please say please. Yes. Thumbs up, please. Okay. By the way, we're going to take from Billionaire Steve to everyone. Does the motor unit determine the growth rate? No. No, it does not. Steve, good question. Okay, what determines growth rate of a muscle is going to be anabolic activity within the muscle cell. But again, we'll get to that. There's a lot more of that to come for sure. By the way, if you guys have any questions, go into your portal. By the way, doing this today does not mean you can't talk to me in the portal or do one-on-one study support or group support with me. Y'all got that, right? Did this kind of wake up some questions for everybody? Yeah, I hope so. If you got more questions like that, go ahead and put them in your portal and send them directly to me. I can answer them for you like that. And who's going to be here next week? Yeah? Okay. So folks, here's what I would like you to do, because I'm going to take a picture of everybody. Okay, I'm going to take a picture of y'all. But first, I'm going to end the recording.